In our first story, a mother is confessing, "I slept with my daughter's ex-boyfriend. He got me pregnant and I had an abortion. They got back together and got married." This was back in, let me think, maybe 1997? I was 38 and my daughter was 18 and she was dating Harry, who was 24. I was an alcoholic and dabbled in other drugs, mostly cocaine. I was not a good person, let alone mother. Not like I was abusive to my daughter or anything, but I was generally inattentive and cared more about my alcohol and drugs than her, especially in her teen years. I am 14 years sober now. I disapproved of my daughter dating Harry but never told her why. He would flirt with me constantly, and the age difference also creeped me out. Also, he was an alcoholic and drug user, just like me, and she broke up with him over his alcoholism. Soon after, she moved away, not too far, but regardless, she didn't live with me anymore. Harry kept calling me and asking if we wanted to get drinks. I turned him down, but then one day he said he had a bunch of coke and I couldn't resist. He came over, we did the coke, and we ended up having sex. He was a very good-looking guy. He looked a lot like that ridiculous 80s Justin Bieber picture that was on the front page today. That is actually what made me think about him. For the next few months, maybe like 3 to 4 months, he would sometimes come over and we would have sex and do drugs and get drunk together. Any drug addict knows what that is like, to have a drug addict buddy in that way. Then I got pregnant. I knew it was by him. I had sex without a condom. A few times, stupidly. I never told him I was pregnant, and I went and got the abortion and kept it a secret. Anyways, I stopped seeing him after that. It was too weird. I also got sober for like 4 months for relapsing. Fast forward 2 years, and my daughter contacts me and tells me that she got back with Harry and that he is fully sober. I was mortified, honestly. He was going to tell her that we slept together and she is going to hate me for life. They came over one day and said hi, and when my daughter was gone, Harry told me that there is no reason to tell her about what happened. I agreed. It's been 16 years of marriage on their part. They have a kid together. Harry got cancer, then beat it, and I got sober. That's basically it. I don't see them very often. They live in Texas, and I live on the East Coast. But whenever I do, there is always that tension between me and Harry. It's literally the first thing that comes to either of our minds. I can just tell. It's not sexual tension or anything like that. It's more like, why did we have to do that? What the fuck was wrong with us? You know, that kind of tension. I think about this often, especially when I see my grandson. I sometimes think that could have been my son if things had gone differently, but wow, what a disaster that would have been if I decided to keep that child. Every person has a secret, but some are darker and more shocking than others. In today's video, we're diving into Reddit's most unsettling confessions. Stories that reveal the pain, regret, and mistakes people have been hiding for years. From forbidden love to unthinkable choices, these stories are bound to keep you on the edge of your seat. If you love hearing jaw-dropping stories like these, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Next, a stranger is confessing, "I witnessed a car accident, saved his life, and became his stalker." About 4 years ago, I witnessed a car accident. A 16-year-old kid was pinned down under the car, and his backpack was preventing him from breathing. Since I am a construction worker, I took my utility knife and crawled under the car, cut his backpack straps, removed the backpack, and pulled him out. I thought at the time he was dead. He was unresponsive, covered in blood and bruises. First responders arrived. I was wet, freezing. I'm wearing nothing but a t-shirt. They resuscitated the kid before my eyes, and I broke into tears of joy. I asked the kid's name after the fact, but they wouldn't tell me because he was a minor. Later on through the news, I found out his name, and I have kept watch ever since through social media. I honestly feel a deep connection with this kid. I think of him as a son, and I would honestly do anything for him. It's always made me feel like a creep doing so. At the time, I had to create a fake FB account, pretending to be a minor. Otherwise, as an adult, you cannot have access to the profiles of underage people. Honestly, just saying so makes me cringe. Sickening. I needed to know he was doing well. The next man is conflicted and is confessing, "My mother bathed me until I was 15 and it haunts me." I've never spoken to anyone about this, so I don't know how other people will view it, but I was extremely sheltered and babied my entire life. My mother and father broke up at a very young age, but still lived together until I was around 10. So I never learnt how to sleep alone until I was 11, since my mum didn't want to sleep with my dad and we didn't have enough bedrooms in the house. I feel sick typing this out, but apparently we used to spoon each other, but until like a few days ago I thought it was just hugging. And I'm sure there was no sexual intent behind it. But everywhere I read, it's apparently a sexual act. I also ended up crying myself to sleep every night as a kid. I don't know why, and I only learnt this isn't normal when I was older. It might have been because I kept moving around, and my mum would yell at me when I couldn't sleep. All of this, amongst other stuff, ended up causing me to become incredibly dependent, and as such, it left me not able to take care of myself at all. I was never taught to do many basic tasks, including bathing myself. In fact, the thing that led me to finally bathing on my own is starting to cut myself so that I could take baths alone. I don't know why I couldn't just ask. I guess it was something that happened my whole life, so I felt too awkward to stand my ground. This stuff genuinely doesn't leave my mind. The idea that I was, and still am, to an extent so dependent on my mother. Trust me, I love her, and she's a better mother now than when I was growing up. But at the same time, in a way, I resent her for not teaching me anything, as it's led to a lot of embarrassing situations in life to the point of contemplating taking my own life. I hate this. The next man is frustrated with the food service industry and is confessing, "I haven't tipped in the last 3 years and I don't care." I live in SoCal, on the coast, about 2 hours northwest of LA. The tipping culture here is rampant. It's truly disgusting to me that franchisees and big corps put it on the customer to pay their workers a living wage. I refuse to participate in this dog shit system. Pay your employees more. What's that? You mean your employees prefer getting tips because they make significantly more than getting a bump in their pay? Yes, screw that noise. I literally never tip. Not at coffee shops, sit-down restaurants, counter workers, or food delivery. I just don't give a F. If you give me the choice, I'm obviously not going to tip. From what I can deduce, I lack empathy, and I'm a huge a-hole for not tipping. Another thing I realised is that a lot of people in the service industry are making pretty decent money. I'd wager around 40 an hour solely on tips that are not taxed. There seems to be a significant backlash from service workers on being paid a decent hourly wage. I assume this is because they would make significantly less than what they did on tips. Another point I want to touch on is how most of these service workers are completely deflecting all blame on the customers who don't tip, as opposed to greedy business owners who refuse to pay them a decent wage. Why, as a customer, am I expected to pay for my food, my drinks, and also the wages of your service staff? I can't think of another industry that works like this. Can you? Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Screw tipping and these greedy corporations and these greedy servers too. This next story is sad. A woman is confessing and said, "I'm kind of glad my son didn't live long enough to make it out of the hospital." My son was born at 28 weeks gestation. He had survived 11 weeks prior to that without any amniotic fluid, and he lived for 11 days before passing away in the NICU. I'm glad he didn't make his father a father. I have so many mixed feelings and so much trauma surrounding this situation. But it all started when I was 6 weeks pregnant and found out that my fiancé at the time was responsible for a cold-blooded murder. When I met him, he had just moved to my city. It turned out he moved to my city to run from his crimes committed in another city 2.5 hours away. I know he did it. He was too detailed and admitted it to me while crying and drunk. He showed me the online report the mugshot of his friend who was sitting in jail for him, how he was still friends on Facebook with his friend waiting out his time. I even went on to discover that I was with him at his aunt's house when he went to bury the murder weapon on her farm. After discovering this, things got violent. Throughout most of my pregnancy, I was crying, being chased, being grabbed and shaken, shoved, hit, yelled and screamed at. This was the cause for my water being broken so early. I apologised to my unborn baby so many times for feeling the way I felt, or being in the situation I was in for almost my whole pregnancy. The day before doctors told me my baby likely wouldn't live, he wished death on our child. Nurses had kicked him out of my room multiple times during my extensive stay in the hospital for his behaviour. I don't care what anyone says, he killed my son. He has robbed 2 mothers of their sons. I love my son, but with what was uncovered while I was pregnant with him, I would never have chosen his father to be a father. I believe him passing away was the best outcome. I wouldn't want him to have a father that wished death on him the day before we found out he may not live. I wouldn't want him to have a violent, homicidal father. I don't want to have ties to that man for the rest of my life. I wish I could apologise to my son for everything. In our next story, a man is confessing. A cop pulled me over and I called 911 and lied to get out of going to jail. Before we dive into the next confession, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Now, let's get into the confession. When I was 19, I was running late to work in my tiny POS economy car, and on fumes of gas, I didn't come to a complete stop on a right turn. Lights behind me, so I pull over. I know I've barely got any gas at all, and was almost to a gas station, hence why I rolled through the stop a little, trying not to have the car die. At the time, around 1995, a new digital phone had come out called VoiceStream, now T-Mobile, and their whole big thing was the phones were digital and not cellular. They were the first phones with caller ID, and one of the big things the salesman had said over and over was since it was digital, the signal couldn't be triangulated or traced. Not that I cared, but it stuck in my mind. Well, as I gave the cop my license, registration and insurance card, I got an idea. I knew if I was late to work, I was going to lose my job. They were super strict there. So I got an idea, and right after I handed the papers to the cop and he's walking back to his cruiser, I called 911 and told the operator I just saw a guy with what looked like a shotgun walk into a 7-Eleven that was about 2 blocks away. I confirmed the address, then I hung up. About 30 seconds later, the cops came sprinting to my car and handed me all my stuff and rushed and said, "Come to a complete stop next time." Then peels off to the direction of the store. Pushed my car to the gas station that I'd almost made it to and felt pretty pleased with my ingenuity. I was an idiot, and I confess. I forgot to mention I would have gotten arrested, booked and released because I was driving with a suspended license for unpaid traffic tickets, and I had a bench warrant for it because I'm an idiot. So it wouldn't have been just a few minutes late to work. Next, this entrepreneur is confessing, I run a fake restaurant on a delivery app. I registered a company, bought all the takeaway boxes from Amazon, signed up for a few delivery apps, made a few social media accounts and printed leaflets that I dropped in mailboxes. I resell microwave meals. On some meals, I add something to make them look better, like cheese. So far, it's at around £200 a day in revenue. Nobody suspects a thing. Soon, someone will come for a hygiene inspection, but I'll pass that check without any problems. It's not illegal to operate out of your own kitchen. Should I feel bad? I feel kind of proud to be fair and free as a bird from the 9-to-5 life. I am not concerned by the legality of things. I'm doing everything by the law. I'm in the UK, so I can work out of a non-commercial kitchen. I am registered and will pay taxes in Jan. I have my certificates and I have insurance. Though there is something I might need to add to the policy, doing that next week. Next, this entrepreneur is confessing, I run a fake restaurant on a delivery app. I registered a company, bought all the takeaway boxes from Amazon, signed up for a few delivery apps, made a few social media accounts and printed leaflets that I dropped in mailboxes. I resell microwave meals. On some meals, I add something to make them look better, like cheese. So far, it's at around £200 a day in revenue. Nobody suspects a thing. Soon, someone will come for a hygiene inspection, but I'll pass that check without any problems. It's not illegal to operate out of your own kitchen. Should I feel bad? I feel kind of proud to be fair and free as a bird from the 9-to-5 life. I am not concerned by the legality of things. I'm doing everything by the law. I'm in the UK, so I can work out of a non-commercial kitchen. I am registered and will pay taxes in Jan. I have my certificates and I have insurance. Though there is something I might need to add to the policy, doing that next week. The next story is tragic. A man is confessing. I killed an elderly man in front of his wife and basically his entire family. I haven't talked about this to anyone, even though it's been years. Even my closest friends, minus the ones that were there. One night when I was in college, I was driving to get some liquor for a party my fraternity was supposed to throw the following night. I was taking a street I was very familiar with to get back to my house. It was dark, but the street was lit with street lamps. I remember that I looked at my radio for a second. Just a second, not very long at all. But when I looked back up to the road, there was a man crossing. I didn't have any time to react. By the time I saw him, he had already hit the hood of my car and bounced off the side. I remember screaming and hitting the brakes, and the wash of horror of what had just happened. I'll admit I had thought about speeding away, but I pulled over to the side and ran out of my car to check on this guy. When I got to him, his family was standing outside the restaurant he was leaving, and they were all screaming and crying. He is lying on the side of the road with bleeding. 2 other men were standing with him trying to see if he was all right and calling 911. All I could say was, I didn't see him. I was frantic by the time it had set in what I had done. I sat on the curb across from the family and listened to their crying in agony while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. I sat there and sobbed while paramedics took him away in an ambulance. I don't believe I've ever cried so hard and for so long. The worst part about all of it, and what still kills me today, was that his wife came over to me while I was distraught on that curb, sat next to me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said, I was married to him for almost 50 years. We had a good life. Then, she hugged me and said that she forgave me. After everything was said and done, it was ruled that it was an accident. I wasn't charged with anything, and I had one of my friends pick me up from the police station. I went down a dark path the years after that. I drank heavily, dropped out of college in my senior year, and had to move back in with my mother and father because I couldn't hold on to a job. Even tried to end my life with pills. It was a hard road to recovery, which I feel I'm not fully recovered from, nor do I feel I ever will be the same. But eventually, I got my life back in order, joined up with the Navy and saw a bit of the world, and now I'm on track to go back to college and hopefully finish what I started there. It took almost a decade, but I finally started to feel almost whole again. I'm back to hanging with my friends and actually going out, so maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Next, a brother is confessing. I used to bully my disabled brother for years. I know this will get a lot of hate, and yes, I deserve it. I am not looking for any validation or forgiveness. I know I am a piece of human trash. I just need to get this out. I have a brother who is 2 years older than me. He has suffered from a condition since birth that forces him to be in a wheelchair any time he is out of bed. He cannot use his arms that well either. We used to have a great relationship until I turned 11, and I really started resenting the amount of attention he took from my parents, and how much stress he put them under. I had to constantly help him, change him, feed him. I hated it. There were a few years in his life when he was so mean to my parents, and it really made me resent him more. I realise now that I had no right to judge him, and I will never know how difficult life is for him. I stopped hanging out with him and made more friends at school. I would tell my family all the fun I was having at school during dinner to make him feel bad. I started barely talking to him or acknowledging his presence. He would get frustrated to the point of tears to get my attention. It started escalating when I was 15 and he was 17. I would purposely turn off the Wi-Fi and unplug the TV every time we had to leave the house so my brother could do nothing but sit in his wheelchair. I would purposely delete his favourite saved shows on the DVR. I would make fun of his speech, push things just out of his reach. I would act disgusted when I had to change or bathe him. It always made him feel bad and he would apologise. I made my own brother apologise for taking a dump. What the fuck is wrong with me? But my fucking saint of a brother never told my parents, and he never let me have it. One time he was trying to talk to me non-stop and I was just ignoring him. I got annoyed and wheeled him against his wishes to the backyard and placed him under an umbrella and went back inside. I fell asleep and realised I left him out there for 3 hours. When I went to bring him back inside, he was in tears and wouldn't look at me. He was humiliated. I had always felt guilty about how I treated my brother all those years, but my anger towards him overpowered it. But seeing that look on his face affected me in a way that was different from before. I stopped all the bullying after that day. I couldn't even look him in the face. I was so ashamed. Shortly after leaving outside for hours, my brother told me he was glad I was his brother and friend. I couldn't even respond. I went to my room and cried. I'm crying again, typing this all out. When did I become an evil trash human being? Fuck. When I was 17 and he was 19. I knew there was nothing I could do to make up for the past 6 years. My brother was returning with my mum from a specialist appointment one night. I decided to apologise to him and beg for his forgiveness that night. I wanted to start being a decent brother to him again. I was a healthy guy with no issues who chose to bully his only brother for something that wasn't even his fault. I am so ashamed of myself. I wrote up a long-ass apology letter that I wanted to read to my brother. I waited until he got home and got into bed for the night. I knocked on his door and he was so fucking excited that it was me. I couldn't even get through the first few words. I started crying after saying, I wanted to say I'm really sorry and just couldn't get through it. I just got into bed with him and laid down next to him. He hugged me really tight and said, I missed you, buddy. I lost it. I never cried that bad before. He just hugged me for a long time until I calmed down. We didn't talk much. He started crying for a bit too. It was the first time in a long time we just hugged. After half an hour, I got up and gave him a kiss and he told me he was so happy. Why didn't I do this earlier? I thought I could try apologising properly again the next day. I left him the note to read anyway. I felt very hopeful and a lot of pressure in my heart was gone. I swore to God, and in my own life, I would never treat my brother so badly again. I have started working part-time and I was saving some money so my brother and my mum could go on a trip to a place he really wanted to go to. But I decided I will take my brother myself instead when I turn 18. I also realised that I needed to have a relationship with my brother where I am not just taking care of him. It needed to be like a normal brother relationship, like going for movies and stuff. I knew it would take some time for me to fix the mess I created. I'm just lucky my brother is amazing. In our final story, a husband is confessing, I found out my dead best friend was in love with my wife. I'm writing this as a confession because I don't know where else to speak about this, and I don't want my kids finding this out on my main account. My friend passed away a few months back due to heart problems. He was taking care of himself, so it was a shock to everyone, especially his wife, who was with him at their house when he passed. Due to this, she decided to move somewhere else, and because she and her daughter were still distraught, she asked me to pack up his stuff. He had some boxes in his basement, and after a while I started feeling nostalgic and decided to look into them. I found pictures of us from when we were kids all the way to before we got married. That was enough to make me feel bad, and I just got back to taping them up. But one of the boxes seemed to be in much better condition, so I decided to check it in case it was something important. To my surprise, I found pictures of him and my wife from when we used to hang out together, as well as more recent pictures from family reunions. The most recent being from my wife's birthday party. Alongside the pictures, there were letters that he never sent her. The first one dated 2 months before I met her. The last one was also the same date of her birthday party. There was one that stood out the most, was one from after I started dating her. He wrote that his time had passed, and since my happiness was as important as his own, he would watch over us. I'll keep his box safe, since it isn't my secret to reveal. And that's it for today's confessions. What do you think? Were these stories as shocking as they seemed? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you want more jaw-dropping confessions, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the latest uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.